The Galactic Council sat in its grand chamber, each representative seated high above in their respective alcoves, a mix of curiosity and skepticism etched across their features. In recent cycles, a series of uncharted signals had emerged from the fringes of human territory, but nobody deemed it worth investigating, until now. "They're calling it the Supernova Fleet," began Counselor Ariat, adjusting his robe as he spoke. "Rumors circulating that the Terran species, humans, have developed a new type of warship." "Humans?" scoffed a council member from the Cordian sector, barely able to contain his laughter. "We're talking about a species that only recently mastered interstellar travel. Warships of any significant caliber would be beyond their capacity." A faint chuckle spread through the assembly, but a few members remained notably silent. One such member was Counselor Drylex, an alien diplomat who had once served in Terran space. He knew of humanity's unorthodox methods, their tenacity when cornered, and their uncanny knack for innovation. "They are unpredictable," Drylex said, his tone measured. "They've adapted technologies beyond our understanding before. Perhaps these supernova ships deserve closer scrutiny." "Ridiculous," another alien sneered. "Even their strongest fleets are laughable compared to ours. A scouting mission will settle this matter quickly." Despite the dismissive remarks, a faint edge of tension lingered in the air, prickling unspoken concerns. The Council ultimately agreed on a scouting mission, minimal, just a handful of ships equipped to gather data and return swiftly with information. Hours later, the scouting fleet departed, slipping through the expanse of space. Silence descended upon them as they neared the edge of Terran space, an almost tangible hush as they activated their sensors, scanning for any sign of the fabled supernova fleet. As their readings began to take form, a chill passed through the crew. They'd expected primitive vessels, perhaps basic plasma cannons or early shield tech. But what their screens displayed was nothing short of bewildering. Before them floated ships that glowed with an eerie, pulsing light, as though each vessel held a miniature sun within. They weren't conventionally shaped. Their designs seemed organic, alive almost, with a faint energy field surrounding each one that scrambled their readings. "Are you seeing this?" one scout whispered, voice trembling. In the Council's grand chamber, the live feeds from the scouts blinked to life, relaying images of the Terran fleet. The counselors leaned forward, some with narrowed eyes, others with expressions of disbelief. The humans had cloaked their ships in energy fields that disrupted scanning attempts. It was as if each Terran vessel was projecting a kind of controlled radiation, one that pulsed and flared unpredictably. "Impossible," a counselor muttered. "Our technology would never allow such interference. These energy fields, they're not shields, they're something else entirely." Back with the scouting fleet, the initial curiosity began to morph into dread. The strange interference wasn't the only anomaly. They began experiencing subtle system glitches, communications faltering, controls lagging, as if something in the human fleet's presence disrupted even their most basic functions. "We need a response," the fleet captain ordered, transmitting a standard hail. "This is the Galactic Council Scout Fleet. State your purpose and intentions." Silence. The human ships drifted in eerie quiet, their lights casting strange, almost hypnotic patterns across the darkness. The captain tried again, his voice more insistent this time. "Identify yourselves, or we will consider this an act of aggression." Nothing but silence answered him, a silence that grew more unnerving with every passing second. A junior officer leaned over, muttering, "Are they even man? Or automated?" But before the question could even be contemplated, the Terran ships responded, not through words, but through a single, synchronized movement. Each vessel turned slightly, aligning in perfect unison with the scout fleet, as if tracking every individual ship with pinpoint precision. It was a maneuver so quick and exact it sent a wave of panic through the scouts. They scrambled for options, but the Terran ships merely held their formation, a silent reminder that the humans were watching, observing, perhaps even toying with them. Back in the council chamber, the counselors watched with growing unease. The Terran fleet's passive stance was unnerving, the silence deafening, punctuated only by the uneasy murmurs echoing throughout the hall. Finally, One counselor broke the silence. "These ships, they're waiting. This is a demonstration," she whispered. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, the smug dismissal replaced by something colder, darker. They were no longer discussing primitive humans. They were facing a fleet of ships capable of disrupting communications, scrambling systems, and projecting a seemingly impenetrable energy barrier. The scouting fleet captain, sensing the impending dread in his own crew, issued the order to retreat. But as they turned to disengage, the Terran fleet adjusted its position again, blocking every route, encircling them in a calculated move that left no gaps. The captain's pulse raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. The humans had planned this. They positioned their ships with precision, closing every potential escape path, leaving the fleet stranded. "What do they want?" an officer murmured, but the captain's gaze remained locked on the human fleet, his voice a low whisper as he spoke to himself. "They want us to see, to understand." The alien scout fleet hung in a tense silence as they tried to process what they were seeing. These were unlike any ships they'd encountered, vessels that shimmered with a surreal brilliance, pulsing with a quiet yet intimidating energy. They appeared otherworldly, as though each craft was not just powered but alive, radiating an almost hypnotic glow. The scouts were familiar with weaponized light-based ships and shields, but this was different. It wasn't merely a defensive barrier. The light itself seemed to emanate from within the ship's core, as if it held a fragment of a supernova in suspension. "Open comms again," the fleet captain ordered, voice strained as he forced his focus. The human vessels remained still, their positioning like an unspoken dare. The crew could sense the humans were calculating, almost indifferent. They were waiting, observing the alien ship's every move with an unnerving patience. The captain transmitted his message once more, choosing his words carefully, hoping to avoid escalation. "We are here on behalf of the Galactic Council. We mean no harm and request safe passage." Again, no response. The silence from the human fleet was almost louder than any threat, leaving the captain and his crew in an uneasy standstill. One of the scout's sensors flickered, reporting intermittent system malfunctions across the board. First, minor glitches, a scrambled monitor, flickering lights. But within minutes, it grew to something more severe. The navigation system stuttered, the propulsion weakened, and the crew began to notice that any attempt to lock onto the human ships failed. A junior officer muttered, "It's as if they're blocking us, but without any known weapon." The words hung heavy, adding to the uncertainty. The crew had trained against countless alien fleets, even faced advanced AI ships capable of targeted disablement, but they'd never seen technology like this. The human fleet was creating a subtle pressure, manipulating systems without engaging in overt attack. It was a power move, an assertion of dominance without a shot fired. The captain, struggling to retain his composure, tried to push past the mounting frustration. He ordered a second diagnostic sweep to assess the malfunctions, desperate for an explanation that didn't lead back to the humans. But as each report came in, his options dwindled. Their scans revealed nothing, yet every system failure pointed to a single, silent culprit: the Terran ships. Even the engineering crew looked stumped, glancing nervously at their displays as they registered the inexplicable power flowing from the human ships, interfering with their mechanics. When the Terran vessels finally moved, it was a single, unified action. They didn't speed forward or engage in any threatening maneuver. They simply pivoted as one, tracking the alien fleet with clinical precision. The crew felt the gaze of every ship, a silent acknowledgement of each scout's position and potential vulnerability. An eerie hum filled the cockpit as their displays readjusted, catching the Terran ships as they made tiny, strategic adjustments. It wasn't aggressive. It was precise. Clinical. The humans had mapped out every exit, every maneuver, and now they simply waited. One of the scouts tried to ping the human ships, an attempt at forcing some kind of response. The signal was absorbed in a flash, not even making it past the field. It became clear to everyone on board that communication would only occur on human terms. The captain, though visibly shaken, decided to test his theory. He gave a quiet order to one of his crew members, requesting a brief but intentional drift to the left, testing the humans' response. The scout ship barely began its movement when the Terran ships responded in perfect synchronicity, blocking its path, their engines thrumming with restrained power. They left just enough room to maneuver back, a message of their intent, a warning wrapped in silence. It dawned on them that they weren't dealing with mere scouts or a defensive patrol. This was something else, a form of warfare that combined strategy with psychology. The human fleet was not attacking but rather performing a calculated show of dominance, cornering without bloodshed. It was a language they all understood, power wielded through restraint, a quiet threat more potent than any weapon. Back at the Galactic Council headquarters, the live feed of the encounter displayed the haunting silence of Terran ships and the increasingly distressed scout crew. Council members murmured in disbelief, their once dismissive expressions replaced with unease. The human silence was growing louder with each minute that passed. Counselor Drylex, the alien who'd warned them earlier, watched intently, noting each movement with grim satisfaction. The Terran ships were giving them a message. A statement that needed no words. When the scout captain tried one final plea, the message from the Terran fleet arrived without warning, a single phrase transmitted directly into their system, bypassing every security protocol as though it were nothing. "Leave our territory. This is your only warning." The words were cold, absolute. The scout fleet was shaken, the human message resonating like an unspoken promise. There was no attempt to elaborate, no offer of negotiation. Just a stark ultimatum. The power behind those words was undeniable, and the scout captain felt the weight of their meaning. Any further provocation would not end well. Trying to hold back a visible tremble, the captain made his decision. He ordered his ships to retreat. The Terran fleet held its position as they turned away, watching them leave with an impassive silence that only added to the unease. For all their advanced tech, their superior weaponry, the Galactic Council ships were humbled without a single shot fired. The scout fleet's return to the Galactic Council was met with an immediate summons. High-ranking counselors gathered, each one agitated, replaying the footage on loop. Counselor Drylex, who had forewarned of humanity's potential, watched as the others now scrambled to rationalize what had transpired. This wasn't a simple encounter. The Terrans had demonstrated strategic intent, and they'd done it without a hint of aggression yet with a chilling finality that no one could ignore. "What did they say?" demanded one counselor, eyes fixed on the scout captain. "Surely they must have offered some kind of reasoning for their interference." The captain relayed the single-line message. "Leave our territory. This is your only warning." His voice echoed in the chamber, and a heavy silence fell over the council members. The straightforwardness of it, the lack of pleasantries, threats, or elaboration, felt like a pointed reminder of their own limitations. The humans hadn't engaged diplomatically, nor had they justified their stance. Instead, they'd stated their position, expecting it to be understood and respected without further discourse. The counselors exchanged glances, unsettled. Diplomacy had always been the foundation of their power. The ability to negotiate, influence, and control had kept the Council at the top of Galactic Order. But humanity's response, its cold dismissal of diplomacy, shattered that illusion, leaving them stripped of their usual leverage. The room buzzed with frantic whispers as Council members weighed their options. Some wanted immediate retaliation, others proposed covert observation. Yet all sensed an underlying fear, a reluctance to press humanity further. Then, just as their debates reached a fever pitch, the council chamber's lights dimmed, signaling an incoming transmission. The source read Terran Fleet. Every council member froze as the transmission displayed in the air, a flickering, faceless message in stark white text against the dark screen. "We warned you to stay away," it began, the words echoing with a calm that felt sharper than any threat. "Our ships are not here to negotiate. Your continued presence will not be tolerated." The council members leaned forward, transfixed. The message continued. "You questioned our strength, our resolve. We demonstrated patience, but know this, these are supernova ships. One of them is enough to lay waste to any fleet that threatens us." The statement lingered, allowing the weight of those words to sink in. In the collective history of the Council, there had never been a fleet with such acclaim, ships that could rival entire armadas, let alone bring devastation with such simplicity. "They're bluffing," one counselor muttered under his breath, but the doubt was palpable, visible in his narrowed gaze. Others seemed less certain, knowing the humans had provided no evidence of dishonesty before. If these ships truly housed the power of a supernova, they were wielding it with an almost terrifying restraint. As if to respond to their skepticism, the Terran message continued. "We possess the means to defend ourselves in ways you cannot imagine. We have harnessed the energy of stars, contained forces your weapons cannot touch. You will respect our boundaries, or we will be forced to show you precisely what a supernova ship is capable of." One by one, counselors began to question the possible ramifications of these words. The galaxy had seen fleets that could obliterate planets, but to wield the power of a star was to operate on a different scale entirely. Some still resisted, clinging to the Council's military dominance, yet a murmur of agreement began to surface among the wiser Council members. They recognized the subtlety with which humanity had maneuvered, either asserting open dominance nor conceding to diplomacy, but instead offering a quiet ultimatum that left no room for debate. The lead counselor attempted a reply, his voice steady despite his unease. "We are willing to respect your boundaries, Terran fleet. But we must know, are you truly prepared to escalate?" In response, a new feed activated. The Council's screens displayed a barren stretch of space. Then, slowly, a supernova ship drifted into view. Its structure was sleek, radiating an intense yet contained energy that pulsed through its core like a heartbeat. For a moment, it simply floated in silence, as if waiting for its audience to grasp the full magnitude of its presence. Then, without warning, a beam of light erupted from its hull, hurtling toward a nearby asteroid. The light expanded as it traveled, gaining intensity until it struck its target with an explosion that eclipsed any weapon the Council had ever encountered. The asteroid disintegrated in seconds, leaving nothing but a faint residue in its wake. A silence filled the room, the counselors unable to deny the scale of what they'd just witnessed. The human message resumed, cutting through the Council's stunned silence. "This was a fraction of our capability. Consider this your second and final warning. Trespass again, and we will not show such restraint." One counselor whispered to another. They're holding back. They're actually holding back." The implication was staggering. Humanity had wielded an unfathomable power with surgical precision, demonstrating control that conveyed not just power but mastery. The humans weren't just ready to defend, they'd cultivated an arsenal built on restraint, wielding the raw power of a supernova as a warning, not as an attack. The Council leader, visibly affected, finally spoke up, his voice softer than before, laced with an edge of awe. "We understand, Terran fleet. We respect your boundaries." The message ended without reply, the screen fading to black as the last of the text dissolved into the quiet. The Council members sat in silence, absorbing the finality of the interaction. Humanity had drawn a line, asserting a level of dominance that had nothing to do with conquest or diplomacy and everything to do with survival. The supernova ships were more than a fleet, they were a message in and of themselves, a warning wrapped in a weapon, controlled by a species that had learned to wield both fear and force with surgical precision. As the Council chamber returned to normal, the members exchanged glances, each one realizing the galaxy had changed in that instant. Humanity was no longer an unknown variable, a minor species with fledgling technology. They had become an undeniable force, a new and dangerous power that demanded respect without needing to ask for it. Without a word, the counselors filed out, each aware that the boundaries of their influence had shifted, their fear woven tightly around the words. Supernova ships. And in the quiet that followed, they knew they would never make the same mistake again. The Galactic Council sat in a tense silence, absorbing the finality of humanity's message. The display had been decisive, controlled power wielded with an unmistakable warning. Counselor Drylex leaned back, watching the faces of his fellow counselors, some filled with disbelief, others masked with fear. The Council chambers, once a place of diplomacy and debate, felt suddenly stifling, charged with an unspoken question, What if they'd pushed too far? For all their collective power, the council members knew that this was not an enemy easily defeated, nor one likely to concede to negotiation on traditional terms. Humans had positioned themselves in a place of strength without leaving any room for doubt. It was as if they had calculated the council's response down to the last detail, predicting every possible move. What they had demonstrated wasn't just power, it was foresight, control, and the ability to wield that control with the kind of restraint that could only come from absolute confidence. One counselor finally broke the silence, his voice tinged with resignation. "We have underestimated them. Again. And this time, it seems, they have no reason to grant us another chance." The council leader nodded slowly. "We are left with two choices. We either accept humanity's ultimatum and refrain from any intrusion into their territories, or—" His voice trailed off, the implication clear but unspoken. Confrontation would mean war, and the humans had already shown what such a conflict might entail. The older council members, many of whom had witnessed the rise and fall of various empires, shared a look of understanding. They had seen enough to know when a power shift was inevitable. Humanity had ascended to a level of technological mastery that no amount of arrogance could deny. Their position had gone beyond mere survival. They had established themselves as a superpower, one that now loomed large on the galactic stage. A younger counselor, visibly shaken, tried to rally a show of resistance. "Surely we cannot be bullied by a single fleet, no matter how impressive. This is the Galactic Council, our combined forces could still—" But Drylex interrupted, his voice firm. "No. You did not see what they displayed with the same eyes I did. This is not a threat we can respond to with brute force. They're supernova ships, they wield the power of a star. And they do so with ease." The counselors murmured, but no one voiced outright defiance. They'd all seen the precision, the chilling control. The image of that asteroid dissolving into nothingness replayed in their minds, a silent, irrevocable testament to human capability. And if that had been only a fraction of what they could do, then there was no telling the extent of humanity's arsenal. As the counselor's words sank in, the council leader took a deep breath, accepting the gravity of their new reality. "If we continue to push, we risk annihilation. Humanity has drawn a line. To cross it is to invite our own destruction. I suggest we heed their warning." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Old rivalries and egos softened in the face of this unyielding truth. In the world of galactic politics, respect was rarely given freely, and fear was a currency all its own. Humanity, through its actions, had bypassed years of protocol, asserting its own rules with a directness the Council had not anticipated. Councillor Drylex watched his peers as they made their decision. For the first time, he felt a strange sense of admiration mixed with a healthy respect. The humans had not only claimed their place, they had earned it. They had sent a message that didn't rely on persuasion, clever rhetoric, or endless diplomacy. Their message had been unadorned, final, and above all, undeniable. The council leader, seeing the consensus, issued the formal decree. The Galactic Council will recognize Terran space as sovereign. No further incursions will be permitted. All council members and member planets are hereby instructed to respect these boundaries. His voice dropped, taking on a somber tone. We do not want a war that could devastate us all. With the decree established, the meeting adjourned, but an unspoken weight remained. As each counselor exited, they understood that this wasn't just a territorial decision, it was an admission of power, one they'd seldom had to make. Later, back in their private spaces, counselors whispered among themselves. Humanity's reputation spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the council's influence. Rumors turned into legends. Some spoke of the humans as if they were beings to be feared, others with a grudging respect. Tales of the supernova ships began to circulate, reshaping the galactic perspective on humans, each retelling adding to their mystique. From the Council's perspective, the humans had orchestrated something incredible, a new galactic order. There was no longer room for dismissive judgments or underestimations. Humans were to be regarded as a force equal to any long-standing empire, if not greater. They'd done it without negotiation, without a single life lost, but with a demonstration so impactful that no counselor would soon forget it. Meanwhile, on the edge of Terran space, the supernova ships resumed their silent patrol, a constant reminder of the unbroken boundary. For the Galactic Council and its countless member species, the message was carved indelibly into the fabric of their collective memory. No one dared test it, and every subsequent interaction with humanity was marked by an ingrained caution, a respect born of fear and the silent understanding of power unmatched. In the following cycles, the Council monitored their new neighbors from afar, watching as humanity continued its steady advancement. New technologies, new ships, and new colonies spread out along the edges of their space, always expanding, always pushing forward. But they never crossed the boundary uninvited, never provoked further, as if their display of strength had been enough to speak for generations to come. And humanity, in turn, continued its course with quiet confidence. They knew the galaxy was watching, aware that one day they might face new challengers, new threats. But the supernova fleet had set a precedent. They had proven that there were some boundaries no empire dared cross. And so, the Terran Empire grew, as their silent armada stood watch, keeping the galaxy in check, leaving only one truth undisputed: humanity's resolve was as unyielding as the stars themselves.